It's a powerful exhibition of what we're talking about and what we're up against. I appreciate the county executive, Joe DiVincenzo, whose support for law enforcement, actually the creation of this academy when he was the chair of the Board of Chosen Freeholders, and continues to support it, is cutting edge. And I appreciate the director of the Police Department of Newark, Director Ambrose, for the insights that I was listening and gleaming from him about what the men and women in his department face every day, including getting many of these weapons off the streets of Newark. And I appreciate Captain Corbos for giving us the demonstration. I remarked he's a good shot, but you don't have to be a good shot with the AR-15. Just to give you a sense, I think it took, what, maybe a minute and a half to fire 3 rounds of a 30 round, a 10 and a 15, so about 50 bullets. And the Parkland shooter, he shot 150 rounds. 150 rounds. And he left magazines behind of another 180 rounds. That's what happened on that tragic day. So it's another example of what we have seen time and time again in our country, from Parkland and Las Vegas, and so in so many places where tragedy has struck, and we have had mass casualties. These military-style weapons and their capacity magazines don't belong on our streets. You can have the Second Amendment, but no privilege and right under the Constitution is unlimited. You can't go under your First Amendment rights into a movie theater and get your kicks out by saying fire, fire, and have everybody rush out. You can't claim your First Amendment rights for that. So you can have a Second Amendment right, but you don't have to have a Second Amendment right to an AR-15. That is basically patterned after military-style assault weapons that we give the soldiers in our service to our country to defend the nation. These are patterned after that type of weapon. We don't need to give that and have that on the streets of our cities. We don't need high-capacity magazines, which is why I authored the Keep America Safe Act to, in essence, outlaw high-capacity magazines, because high-capacity magazines is for one thing and one thing only: high-capacity killing. You don't go hunting for a deer and shoot 50 rounds into it at the end of the day and think you're going to eat it at the end of the day. So this isn't about anything but high-capacity killing. According to the Violence Policy Center, 1 of every 4 police officers who was killed in the line of duty in 2016 was killed by an AR-15. 1 in every 4 police officers in 2016. So not only are our citizens obviously at the mercy of a weapon of really just killing as much as possible, but the very officers sworn to protect us and who risk their lives most likely face the fact that they may be shot down in the line of duty by an AR-15. Lastly, I was listening to the reports of the trauma surgeons who were dealing with the Parkland victims. And they said that the thing about the assault rifle is that the damage done to the human body cuts a wide path of destruction. A radiologist reading one of the x-rays of the Stoneman Douglas victim said, quote, "The organ looked like a overripe melon smashed by a sledgehammer." A surgeon, one of the trauma surgeons who opened up a young victim on the operating room, found only shreds of the organ that had been hit by a bullet from the AR-15. Nothing could be done to help the victim, and they died. So with the AR-15, you don't have to be Captain Corbo and be a great shot. You just have to be able to keep clicking that trigger, and you'll do massive damage. We as a nation can do much better than this. Now, I'm disappointed that I thought this week we were going to have votes in the Senate on the question of common sense, reasonable gun safety measures. For example, having everybody go who wants a arm under the Second Amendment to go through a reasonable gun safety measure, a universal background check. So whether you buy it at a licensed firearm dealer, or whether you buy it on the internet or at a gun show out of the trunk of a car, you would have to ultimately go through a background check, or you'd be violating federal law. At least we would know those who have criminal records, those who have mental illnesses, those who are domestic abusers would be stopped from getting access to a weapon. Seems to me that's common sense and reasonable. It seems to me that eliminating high-capacity magazines is common sense and reasonable. You can still have an arm, a firearm, but you don't actually turn it into a weapon of mass destruction. Those are just two of the measures I thought would be reasonable. And yet, I just heard as I was coming over here that instead of dealing with reasonable gun safety measures, we'll be talking about some banking bill. I'm sure banking bills are important, but they don't save lives. This is about saving lives. It's about making our streets and our communities safer. This is about giving the police officers who defend us a fighting chance. We can do much better. I voted for the assault weapons ban in 1994, and I was proud to do so. Unfortunately, it was part of the crime bill, and the crime bill had a sunset, and with that sunset, it lapsed. And I would support its reauthorization and its reimposition. I don't believe that this is what you need to go hunting. I don't believe this is what you need to defend yourself. The only thing that this does is kill as many people possible in as short a time as possible. So you can still have Second Amendment rights, but you don't need that. So, yeah.
Senator, can you give us an update on what's going on in Washington? What's going to happen before,
Well, that's, I thought I was here today because there were going to be votes this week, and I wanted to dramatize the result of what it is, that the consequence, because we hear these things, AR-15s, and we hear about people being killed, but when you see it visually, you understand. Imagine being a student in that school or any school in America, and someone with an AR-15 and a whole series of clips is walking down your hallway shooting away. The absolute terror that must exist. So I thought this week we were going to have votes. And that's what the majority leader, Senator McConnell, led us to believe. And then I hear today that we're going to have a banking bill. A banking bill can wait. Lives can't. And so we need, as a country, to raise our voices and insist that the Congress have the same courage that the Stoneman Douglas students have exhibited. They took a tragedy and they turned it into a movement. And they have demanded that those who represent them make sure that once again becomes never again. And we're going to continue to pressure and keep this focus until we have that opportunity on the floor of the United States Senate.
Senator Menendez, how frustrated and surprised are you that over the last few weeks you can't get a vote on the floor? And what do you say to those that are preventing votes like an assault weapon ban bill?
Well, our Republican colleagues are insisting that in order to get a vote on either an assault weapon ban or universal background check or high-capacity magazines, that they're also be included with a concealed carry national weapon provision, which basically says that if you got your gun in some other part of the country, including countries that have far laxer laws than we have here in New Jersey, where the checks are far less than what we require, that the circumstances as to how you get a weapon and conceal it is with a far lower level of scrutiny than we require, that person could come to New Jersey with their concealed weapon, notwithstanding our own law, and under a national law be able to carry it into a press conference like this, a church where you're worshiping, a mall where you're shopping, or a school where your kids are. I think it's pretty outrageous. So it is enormously frustrating to me, but while that frustration exists because we have an opportunity to save lives here. We have an opportunity to save lives. Now look, somebody may have a gun and still shoot somebody, but they won't have 30, 50 or more clips, shots to be able to do that. And so we can limit the risk. And at the end of the day, getting a background check universally makes sure that we keep guns out of those who should never have it in the first place. I don't know how anybody can reasonably say that that doesn't make any sense. It makes a lot of sense. And so I'm frustrated, but that frustration isn't going to overcome that I'm going to look with my colleagues for any opportunities, even if it's not on a specific gun safety legislation, to look for opportunity for amendments, to test the will of the Senate to respond to the American people. And we will find that moment. It may not be this week, but we will find that moment.
Senator,
Yes.
have you spoken to the president? You know where he stands in all of this?
I have not personally spoken to the president. I saw the president's, I don't know how to describe it because I went through this on DACA. So I was at the meeting at DACA where he sounded reasonable, and I thought we were going to come to some common ground. And then he totally acted differently. I saw the one that he had with some of my colleagues at the White House, and I thought, again, it was reasonable, but now I see that he's back to where the NRA wants it to be. So the reality is I haven't spoken to him, but it's not enough to say our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. It's not enough. It's not enough. At some point that rings hollow. And so I hope the president's conscience, as he saw those young people and went to Florida, is pricked sufficiently to act. Let me get somebody else if there's somebody else. Yeah.
Have you ever been around an AR-15 being shot? If you haven't, were you surprised by how loud it was, how much of an impact it has?
Yeah, I mean, today was the first day that I've actually seen it in person. I've seen videos of it, but I've seen it in person. And it's not the loudness, it's the deadliness. It's the deadliness. As I said, Captain Cord was a good shot. He was actually looking to shoot the target. With an AR-15, if you were all standing here and I had an AR-15, I wouldn't need to be a good shot. I just had to keep firing that clip, and we would kill a lot of people. That to me is pretty shocking. That's what we allow in our society.
And what are your thoughts on the 7-piece legislation that was talked about last week?
The what?
The 7-piece legislation, the bill package that was talked about last week in Trenton.
In Trenton, I haven't focused on it as well, so I don't know all the specifics of it. But my hope is if it follows along the reasonable gun safety measures that we have advocated in Washington, that when the Congress fails to act, I'm very happy to see states act at the end of the day. But here's the problem. The director mentioned it. We have become a gun trafficking corridor. So while we have tough laws and we have the 6th lowest rate of deaths based upon gun violence as a result of those laws in the entire country, the reality is when guns come from other parts and travel through our state, whether from the south through the Turnpike corridor or along from Pennsylvania, that then these officers have a challenge. These officers have a challenge. And so we are challenged by not having national laws that at the end of the day give us a seamless blanket to make sure that we have the security that we need.